Our gospel today comes from the Gospel of Luke, and there we read, "Soon after healing the centurion's slave, Jesus went to a city called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the gate of the town, a man who had died was being carried out. He was his mother's only son, and she was a widow, and with her was a large crowd from the town. When the Lord saw her, he had compassion for her and said to her, 'Do not weep.' Then Jesus came forward and touched the bier, and the bearers stood still. And Jesus said, 'Young man, I say to you, rise.' The dead man sat up and began to speak, and Jesus gave him to his mother. Fear seized all of them, and they glorified God, saying, 'A great prophet has risen among us, and God has looked favorably on his people.' This word about him spread throughout Judea and all the surrounding country." Let us pray. O Lord, may your words only be spoken and your words only heard. We do ask this all for your love's precious sake. Please be seated. Well, it is summertime, and with summertime, there is often a bunch of superhero movies that come out. And so two of the most recent superhero movies were Captain America's Civil War, and then just recently, the X-Men. And these superheroes, along with other superheroes like Thor, Iron Man, Spider-Man, are all members of what are called the Marvel Universe. Marvel is a comic book maker. Many of you probably remember reading Marvel when you were growing up. Maybe you still do. And so the superheroes in this particular comic book maker's world is called the Marvel Universe. And so we're in a sermon series now that we're calling the Marvelous Universe, not because it has anything to do with superheroes at all, but just because I like the way it sounds. And so the Marvelous Universe, and what it's about seeing what's super in the world. So there is sort of that tie-in, superheroes, what's super in the world, how real people often behave like superheroes. And so it's a look at what's right and not wrong, what's good and not bad, how far we've come, and not how far we're falling short. It's a look at all the reasons we have to be positive about all that is right in the world. What a marvelous universe! So much super, remembering what's super all around us. And next week, we're going to continue with Funk Sunday. And funk is, I didn't know much about funk, really. You know me, I was actually a heavy metal guy, so didn't listen to much in the way of funk. But funk is really a celebration of life. And so it's going to fit very nice into very positive music. And when they actually put the set list together, I realized I knew all the songs. So, for instance, one of them is, "Thank you for letting me be myself." Well, it goes a little bad, I mean, it was sort of, but that was Sly and the Family Stone, great song, and this idea of celebrating the ability to be ourselves. So you don't want to miss next Sunday. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then the Sunday after that, I'm particularly excited about that sermon, because we're going to look at what's super about the dads at St. Matt's. The next Sunday will be Father's Day, and typically the way I've approached Father's Day is I've reflected on my life as a father and maybe told a story or two about my own dad. But this year what I'm going to do is, it's occurred to me in the 15 years that I've been here that St. Matthew's has benefited immeasurably from the high caliber of dads we have in our congregation. We've just been so blessed by the quality of the fathers that we have here. And as I've looked over the last 15 years, I've come to realize that there's really three things that you do as dads that are such a gift to your family and are such a gift to our church family. And so I just want to lift those things up, celebrate those things, and encourage us in those things. So kids and spouses, have your dads here. Dads, come, because we do want to celebrate the way that you've blessed us immeasurably. And I think you're going to get something out of that sermon. So I've got a lot out of it, just putting it together and reflecting on what I've seen in you and the ways that you've inspired and encouraged me. So be here for Father's Day. I also understand that we've got a great start to that service, which you don't want to miss. It could be pretty cool. Today, as we think about the marvelous universe, we want to think that one of the things that's super about the world in which we live is the many ways that people show each other compassion. And of course, it's not just church people that show each other compassion. It's people in the world all around us. And yes, sometimes people can behave like jerks, and that's mostly what we hear about. But often, there are also a great many people who choose to be compassionate instead. Kids can be compassionate. If you look in the back there, you see that sort of red sign, red poster that was made by some of our kids. And as you go out, just take a look at that. That's our new family mission project. And you can see how one of our young children made that sign. And you feel the compassion just flowing through that choice to be compassionate. And it's an invitation for all our families to join together and engage in a ministry of compassion, if you will. Young people show compassion. Not quite as young people show compassion. Often surprising people show compassion. We don't hear about it. You know that Prince died about a year ago. Prince was a singer. Again, I never listened to Prince. I always thought Prince was kind of strange. It wasn't my kind of music, and I just thought I thought he was a little strange. But kind of to find out when he died that a lot of people really loved Prince, and that he'd come to be a very spiritual person, and that a friend wrote a tribute to him and said Prince never told anybody any of this, and he would be really upset with me for telling this, but it needs to be said. He was an incredible humanitarian. He was always acting in compassion, doing whatever he could for the people around him in his neighborhood. He knew the people in his neighborhood. If there were any ways he could help out, he helped out. He chose to act in compassion. My wife recently went to a seminar on viruses. She's a nurse and works in public health at a local high school, and so they're always trying to stay in front of various trends. And of course, epidemics are one of the things that we all need to manage. And so she was at something, was talking about that, and they were talking about Ebola. And they said, you know, and you may have never thought about this, I never thought about this, but when humanitarian workers, when AIDS workers go to third world countries, and they, by terrible misfortune, contract something like Ebola, they can't fly back on a commercial airline. So they got to medvac them out of that country over to somewhere where they can get the care. And you know how much a medvac plane costs? $250,000, all right? So that's a $250,000 flight. Humanitarian AIDS worker, $1.5 million, you know, $250,000. These don't compute. Right? They're in different worlds. And so how in the world does a humanitarian afford a $250,000 flight? Well, one of the people who has provided those flights is Jeffrey Zuckerberg, is the founder of Facebook. He doesn't tell anybody. You probably never heard that. You don't know that. The only reason I know that is they mentioned it in this seminar as a part of sort of the public record. Did I get his name right? Mark. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, see, I don't even know his name, but and he would probably like that because he doesn't want the praise for this. But behind the scenes, here's this guy who is acting in compassion. What a beautiful thing. And in today's gospel, we see Jesus choosing to act in compassion. And what happens when people act in compassion is God puts a person in place who has what another person needs. God puts one person in place who has what another person needs. And this is what happens in the gospel. There's these two parades, if you will. There's this parade from last week. Jesus had this interaction with the Roman centurion. It got a lot of people's attention. A lot of people are intrigued by Jesus, so they're following him. There's this great throng of people walking down the road. And then there's this other parade, and it's a funeral parade. This woman has lost her only son, a very tragic circumstance, and all the people of town wanting to support her are following her. And these two parades meet. And in this meeting, God puts in place a person who has what another person needs. He puts Jesus in place to help this woman in the midst of her grief. And so Jesus, by compassion, chooses to offer what he has to help this woman, to give her precisely what she needs in that moment. And Jesus raises her son to new life. Now, personally, I think if there is a God, and I think there is a God, if God can seed the universe with life, if God is a supernatural being, then bringing life to a dead person shouldn't be too hard for God. So I don't have any problem with that. But I understand that for some people, that might be a bit of a stretch. And so there are also other ways to understand that. When we hear of Jesus bringing life to a dead person, if there's any person that seems like they're beyond God's reach, beyond God's compassion, it's a dead person, right? And so when Jesus can actually bring God's compassion to a dead person, part of what the Gospeler is saying is that God can bring life to anybody. God can bring compassion. There's nobody beyond the compassion of God. And then because in that day and age, they didn't have refrigeration, they didn't know how to embalm, it was a warm climate. When somebody died, bodies started to decompose pretty quickly. That's a health risk. So they declared dead bodies unclean. Nobody was supposed to touch them. That was a way of keeping people from getting disease and disease spreading. And so a dead person was unclean. You weren't supposed to touch a dead person, but Jesus comes and by compassion, he touches this unclean person. And there's this statement that's saying there's no one that is too unclean for God to touch that person. So personally, I think all three of those things are going on. I think Jesus really did raise this person up. That's why we still hear about it all these years later. But I think there's also these statements about saying that no one is beyond God's compassionate reach. No one is unclean or unworthy of God's compassionate touch. And so then the call for us becomes to exhibit this compassion in our own lives, to take a marvelous universe and make it marvelouser still. to take a super universe and make it even more super by choosing to be compassionate ourselves. We'll make all kinds of choices in our days. We'll choose, we'll choose to read something. We'll choose to check social media. We'll choose to maybe learn something. We'll choose to exercise. We'll choose to better our business position or standing. But may we also equally choose with equal diligence, and maybe even greater diligence, may we choose each and every day compassion. This week I heard a story. I can't tell you this story because of confidentiality reasons. It's a story about a person, one of us, a person just like you, a person just like me. And again, because I want to respect this person's confidentiality, I'm not going to go into any details. But I will tell you, I would tell you that this is the most heartbreaking story I've ever heard, but the truth of the matter is I've heard too many stories like this. And it's not the only story like this I've heard in the last week. But when the person was telling me about what our parishioner was going through, life had just dealt this person a cruel, cruel blow. The person who was telling me just began to choke up, and this person's eyes began to fill with tears, and man, I tell you what, I began to choke up, and if you heard this story, you would cry. It would break your heart. I just guarantee you. I mean, it's just like, oh my goodness, the kind of things if you think about too long, you'd never sleep another wink at night. And just absolutely heartbreaking. But as heartbreaking as it is, it's not a bad story because one of our parishioners listening to God was exactly where they needed to be, exactly when this person needed something from this parishioner. And something happened this week, a tragic situation took a turn even for the worse, another devastating blow, and it's hard to know what this person would have even done when this happened. But right exactly when it happened, our parishioner was there with this person, was able to do exactly what needed to be done in the moment, and was able to help this person walk through something that just, I mean, who knows where it would have gone if this person hadn't been there. And so this, again, is the marvelous universe. It's people like you who are out there caring for people, allowing God to put you in those places where you can offer exactly what it is that somebody else needs. And if you're not there and you're not in those places, you don't offer them, man, who knows what happens in some of these situations. For this to happen, we need to do three things, and these are going to be brief, all right? And they really will be brief. Going to run through these. This is like a 2/3, 1/3 sermon. We've gone through 2/3, about 1/3 to go, so we're almost done. The first thing we simply need to do is we need to start the day by making ourselves available to God. So whatever God you believe in and however you conceive of God, just in some way, shape, or form, say, God, I'm available. Use me today. Help me to help others. All right? Every day I start my day, God, use me today. My hands be your hands, may my feet be your feet, may my mouth be your mouth. Help me bring people into my life and allow me to help them. And that way, when people come into my life, when they're in any kind of need, I don't have to say, should I do something or not? I know I should, because I already prayed about that. So I would recommend that you start every day, that I start every day with the simple prayer, God, use me today. God, help me to help others. And because that primes us. It's called priming. It primes us to see need around us. Then the second thing we need to do is when we see those people that are in need, we need to actually choose to offer compassion. We need to let compassion move us to help them. There will be other choices. We could ignore them. We could do something else. We can go on our way. But when we've said that prayer, it's making that choice to actually respond in compassion. And then the third thing is, and this is the hardest, is we have to learn to live with heartache, all right? We live in a pain-averse society. And so to put ourselves in situations where we feel pain, that's not going to come natural to any of us. And it's not pleasant. But even more than that, we're not going to be able to fix most of these situations. All right? We'll be able to help. We'll be able to do something. And what we're going to do is going to be really, really important. We're going to be able to bring what is needed into that moment. But we're probably not going to be able to fix the situation. Most of the problems that people deal with were years in coming. They're problems that have occurred year after year after year. And so it's going to take years to fix them. There is no simple word. There is no miraculous prayer. There is no action that we can take that in one moment is going to take a terrible situation and fix it. And so to act in compassion really does take a certain amount of humility that says, I might not be able to fix this, but I'm going to help in the way I can. And a lot of times we get scared. We say, I don't know if I'll get it right. This situation is so broken. I don't know if I'll get it right. I don't know. You don't have to get it right. That's not the important thing. The important thing is just that you care. And something that somebody said to me years and years ago, probably 30 years ago, and I think of it every single week. There's not a week that goes by, there's not an occasion where I don't say this to myself because it was just so helpful to me. But what a person once said to me is, they said, Rob, there is no straight path in a crooked situation. There's no straight path in a crooked situation. And what he was saying is that in life, because we live in as marvelous as our world can be, it's also broken in a great many ways. We're going to come up against some of these crooked situations, some of these wrong situations, some of these painful situations, and we're just not going to be able to set them right. There's no right path through them. You don't have to get it right. You don't have to come with the magic word, the magic prayer, the magic action. All you have to do is care. So take comfort in that. Be not afraid. There is no straight path in a crooked situation. You're not going to get it right, but that's okay. If you just do what needs to be done in the situation, if you just sit with the person, if you just care for the person, that is the one thing that is required. And so as we do this, as we choose to respond with compassion to the people who are all around us in need of compassion, as we allow God to bring us to that place where we have what somebody else needs, we will take a marvelous universe and make it even marvelous, sir. Amen.
Amen.